And so just to follow up on some of the components in this strategic plan, you know, I noticed even on the MCDC's website that we talk about the ag reserve, but we don't talk about the economic opportunities and agribusiness opportunities. It's 93,000 acres. It's part of the emerging industries that, you know, we should be able to ensure that they're part of the next and they're included in amplifying everything that they're doing, not just up county, but as an incredible resource to attract new businesses, especially with the hospitality endeavors, investments that are being made. It would be really helpful to learn more about what this body sees as an opportunity, how we're leveraging the ag reserve, and how that is going to be supported in this Be Next.
It's been an amazing time for women in the sense that we are, I think, experiencing this extraordinary new wave of activism and advocacy, and just really, truly, I think we're nearing this, or we are in the middle of this turning point with movements like the Me Too movement and Time Is Up. We know that there is a record number of women running for office, and so I do believe that as we celebrate this very important month that really marks this whole notion of women coming into the workforce, both in France and then it just spread all over the world as a month to celebrate the importance of women and equal rights, et cetera. At the same time, we should, you know, really be mindful and reflect and be very active in support of those women who have had the courage to step up and carry the mantle again, and hopefully, you know, change permanently a lot of the extraordinary negative behaviors and treatment and unequal treatment as well of women. So it is a pleasure to be here with these extraordinary people from the Commission for Women and to serve with somebody like Councilmember Nancy Florine, who has really paved the way for so many of us here on the Montgomery County Council.
Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Navarro. And I want everybody to remember it used to be National Women's Week, International Women's Week, and it's International Women's Month now. And let's hope this is gonna morph into International Women's Year. Because the fact of the matter is, as Nancy has said,
As you said, John, to make the Olympics.
Here's the vault.
She vaulted her way into history in 1992 when she became the first African-American woman to win an individual Olympic medal in artistic gymnastics.
They call her Awesome Dawson.
And again in 1996, when she and the Magnificent Seven took home the gold in the Summer Olympics in Atlanta. Dominique Dawes grew up in Montgomery County, and today she and her husband, Jeff Thompson, are raising their 4 kids here.
We would not have made history.
In her post-Olympic life, she has been a motivational speaker.
No matter how low someone may seem to you on a totem pole or how high you may seem on a totem pole, you need each other to achieve your greatest potential.
And has done some media work.
See, the thing is, even when you're swinging, you're working on your upper body strength, right?
But today, she believes she has found her calling in opening the Dominique Dawes Gymnastics Academy. And her goal, not to turn out Olympic athletes, but to change the culture of the sport.
The seed was planted very much in response to everything that happened. I hope I'm not breaking any rules by bringing 2 of my 4 children up this evening. I have my 5.5-year-old Kateri, who was so excited about being on stage with mommy, and now she's turned her back down. And then my 4-year-old, who's very much like me, very introverted and tries to shy away from the stage whenever she can. And I will keep this short. I am a speaker. We can be very long-winded. Politicians, you understand, right? But I truly just want to say it's an honor. You know, I went to 3 Olympic Games, definitely inspired and touched many lives throughout my nearly 20-year journey. But I realized the minute that my career was over that it's sports and those achievements that really don't lead to happiness, don't equate to fulfillment. I was blessed to meet my husband, Jeff Thompson, a local school teacher. And yes, honey, this is date night. And we always bring half the kids. But we are completely opposite. If this were him up here receiving an award, you would see this whole place packed and there would be standing room only, because he has made it an effort in his life to build a true, healthy connection with people. And being from the upbringing that I came from, it has been very terrifying and a very fearful opportunity for me to come out of my shell. But marrying someone like Jeff, who is my complete opposite, has been a blessing for me. And today, oh my gosh, wow. Oh my gosh, wow. As a mom of 4, the gold medal,
as well as valuable networks for the next generation of female leaders. Today we have the board of directors with us, and also there's a staff person sponsor, which is Ms. Shella B. Cherry. We have Crittenden Services of Greater Washington. They empower teen girls in the Greater Washington area from lower income families to make positive decisions about their future, create healthy lifestyle habits, and prepare themselves for a successful career. Additionally, the organization works to promote reproductive health and valuable education about contraceptives among young women. I do like to recognize Ms. Debbie Guerrero from Crittenden Pearls alum from Montgomery Blair High School, who is here with us as well. Last but not least, we wanted to honor Ms. Ananya Dadikonda, who is the student member of the Board of Education. And let me just say that as someone who served on the Board of Education, I am always blown away by the quality of the student members of the Board of Education. And it's hard because when I say that I have a favorite, then the next one comes and then they do some other amazing thing. And it's like, okay, now this is my favorite, but it really is a family of amazing leaders. And I have to say that Ananya is one of them. She is so focused on her priorities and how to bring along the student leadership and has made an extraordinary contribution.
We have another bill coming up about boards and commissions right after this one. And these are important bodies. They are staffed by individuals who are appointed to serve from our community, and they provide valuable policy guidance and directive to us, specific to different regional issues or different topical issues of interest to the council and to the county executive. But it's incredibly important that the work of these bodies be transparent, both for the public at large and for the specific members of the individual bodies who are giving their time to serve. And often that hasn't been the case. So last August, the State Open Meetings Compliance Board found that several of these bodies violated the existing State Open Meetings Act requirements by failing to provide advance notice of meetings, failing to provide the public a way to access the meetings, failing to provide agendas and provide agendas in a timely manner, and by failing to prepare minutes or post them online. What was also concerning was how the board found big inconsistencies in how different boards and committees are providing these advance notices or the timing of them. Some of them are waiting till the last minute, even if the body has announced at its last meeting or shortly thereafter.
Swimming multiple events for the team and just trying to do my best in all of them, and I exceeded all my expectations.
Is this your childhood pool? Is this where you got your start? So when did you start swimming?
I started swimming when I was 6 for the Palisades team, and I started with my brother, and we joined the swim team together, and it all came from there.
So when you first hit the water and tried out for the team for the first time, did they know there was something special about you?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not. I mean, I was pretty good when I was younger. I would win some mini-meet events and stuff. I qualified for Olympic trials when I was 14, I think, the year before Olympic trials, and after that it was just really committing to that goal of making the Olympic team.
It's really been only a year since you've really exploded onto the scene. Tell us what your highest point has been.
I guess London was definitely really big. This is the Olympic gold last year from the 800 free.
This young girl, she's the young one on the American team, 15 years of age, the youngest ever to win the longest race for women here.
What a phenomenal performance. Wow.
But I feel like my races in Barcelona matched that or exceeded that.
And it's turned into the spotlight on Katie Ledecky once again in her first World Swimming Championships. Blew away the field in the 800 in London in the Olympics and is running away with this one.
Definitely the world records were amazing and something I'll never ever forget. So this year has just been crazy fun and a lot of fun to share with everybody the experiences I've had. I mean, I've put in a lot of hard work. It's not really a surprise, but I definitely exceeded expectations that I had for myself.
Where does breaking 4 minutes rank among what you consider your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, by far, that's my greatest accomplishment.
Tell me a little bit about Katie Ledecky outside of the pool. What do you like to do? Do you have other things in school that you participate in?
Yes, I'm a member of Campus Ministry Board at school, so I help plan liturgies and sort of promote faith in our school. And then outside of that, I'm pretty busy with swimming in school, but I try to spend as much time as I can with my friends and family.
Aún habiendo el dinero para la renovación del Recreation Center.
Even though there were funds for the renovation of the recreation center, there was a group of people who wanted to keep it as something historic. But we as members of the community saw that it did not make much sense to have a building that no longer had much functionality, and our young people needed a bigger and newer recreation center.
Que ya no tenía mucha funcionalidad y nuestros jóvenes necesitaban un recreation center más grande, novedoso.
And this was how a long journey of advocacy began for several Hispanic families, participants of the Latino Civic Project, who came together to form the Grandview Neighborhood Circle.
Me siento muy contenta y orgullosamente quiero decir que esta librería con este Recreation Center fue el resultado.
I am very happy and proud to say that this library and the Recreation Center were the result of the advocacy of a group of Latino families. If we had not been knocking on doors, this would have not been possible.
Todo lo que se hizo, la verdad, no estuviera este proyecto.
Monica arrived in Montgomery County 22 years ago. She came with a ticket back to Mexico, never imagining that here in the United States, she would meet the love of her life. As her family grew, the desire to take care of her children made her reinvent herself by starting her own business as a family childcare home provider.
La concejal Navarro ha sido, sin duda,
Councilmember Navarro has undoubtedly been a very strong supporter of our child care provider sector. She has always been in favor of education and early education.
Proposal certainly that I like, and I really appreciate your comments, Councilmember Ledecky, around the importance of having time to discuss. And I think, again, similar to what Councilmember Jawando said, as I thought about what future councils, I think the important piece here is what is going to really make council members feel like it is okay for them and not, rocking the boat too much, not causing too many problems, but in fact is something that is, okay and welcome and that we can do kind of as a united body. What is going to really give permission functionally to allow people to propose changes that might actually be accepted. My feeling as I envision myself in this scenario, as I try to envision future council members in this scenario, is that coming in and saying, let's make a change to this committee structure that, the council president has spent, grueling hours trying to sort out, to propose a change to that is a big deal. And it can feel like it's undermining a tremendous amount of work and thought and effort that has gone into it. And I think that any of us and future council members.
And we'll begin with Chinese ethnic musical traditions, where music is considered a highly calming influence. Hailing from a family of musicians, Ru Fu grew up with a burning passion for music and a dream to follow suit.
My mom sings every day for hours. That's her favorite leisure activity. And I think she was a single mom, So she, during her most difficult times, she would go to karaoke. And because there was no one else to take care of me, she would take me with her. So I just grew up listening to her singing a lot, and she just sang and sang. And I'd pick things up.
Rui specializes in improvisational interpretations of Chinese ethnic musical traditions and modernist portrayals of ancient meditative music. Through her music, she wants to communicate positive messages about China, unity, and diversity.
I always feel that I hope people can learn a bit more about each other's culture and the context behind what we're saying.
I know many of us have been having conversations on ensuring that our communities continue to be places where young people, children, families, young adults, and older folks feel safe and enjoy all we have in our county. And to do this, we all need to be working together, our residents, our businesses, and our government. And, we've talked about how we need to solve crimes in the short term and prevent them in the long term. This body has talked about gun safety laws, increasing mental health services, and continuing and expanding our programs for young people. And there's so much more we need to be doing. Specifically, I appreciate the bill the county executive has sent over. I think it is a great start to look at those areas that we do have in our community that have the late night businesses, ones that we're glad we have those businesses here, but we also understand that some of the areas have been experiencing high calls for service. And so in the spirit of wanting to work together, I will be offering amendments to this bill, specifically providing a provision to create grants to help small businesses meet the safety requirements, in addition to those businesses who may have been harmed due to the effects of crime in the area. Because I believe we need to be supporting our small businesses, making sure they thrive.
Iman Musa, an Egyptian restaurant owner specializing in kosheri, Egypt's national dish, noticed that there wasn't enough North African cuisine representation in the area. So she decided to do something about it.
I decided to name the brand after the traditional dish because I wanted people to know what kosheri is, and I jokingly tell my customers now when you ever land in Cairo, you know what to order for yourself. But the origin of the word is the khichdi meal, which is an Indian meal, and this is a piece that I was very happy to discover. This meal traveled from India to England, and then it went to Egypt, and a lot of modifications happened to it and became the kosheri bowl.
Iman has seen her customers find a familiar taste in the dishes she prepares, which she thinks has contributed greatly to the popularity of African cuisines.
African food is on the rise, very popular. Egyptian food is now on the rise. We have several now Egyptian spots around the area. It used to be only New York. Now they're spreading out a little bit and other states around. So it is on the rise. People are realizing that those are very familiar flavors. The restaurant owners are breaking this fear of, oh, no one knows what Egyptian food is, so I'm not gonna make it. And they're starting to introduce it to the market. So I'm really optimistic.
Mi esposo fue diagnosticado con cáncer y para mí fue una...
My husband was diagnosed with cancer. It was a great obstacle in my life, and I thought I was not going to be able to overcome it. At that moment, I had to reevaluate whether to resume my career in foreign commerce or as a child care provider. It was then that I approached Montgomery County and saw that there were several options.
De comercio exterior o el de cuidado de niños, pues entonces que me acerqué a los del condado de Montgomery.
Every cloud has a silver lining. The desire to take care of her husband made Angelica reinvent herself.
Tuve la dicha de cambiarme hace 3 años aquí en Olney y fue cuando me propuse.
Is the story of what was there originally, what came through colonialism, what came through immigration, refugee situations also, and modernization and globalization.
Emily explained that although each of these different countries have a distinct cuisine, when it comes to the broader regions of Africa, there are still lots of commonalities due to the environment and cultural influences.
There are 54 countries in Africa. There are countless languages. Of course, it's not a monolithic cuisine, right? There is just diversity everywhere. In the north, you have countries, most people know, say, Morocco and Tunisia, heavily influenced from French colonialism. So you have some of the French names for dishes, classical French techniques, and so on, but then also Middle Eastern influence with the spices.
committee session with the education committee. How can we be more proactive in connecting companies, big companies, with high schools? And in this case, anything that deals with green jobs in Wheaton, just because of this program, will make sense. So that's something that I would love to follow up with you. I did hear from some folks that sometimes different high schools contact the same company, and it overwhelms the company. So I think we need somebody to really be strategic and say, maybe this high school should be connected with Marriott, and this other high school we should be connected to, I don't know, this other company based on strategic goals. In Wheaton, just because of this, I think it has to be about sustainability. To me, that's common sense.
I came to this country with my Chinese musical dialect, and I use this dialect to tell my story, share my culture with people. Every audience heard my music. Every musicians collaborated with me. They have already tasted a little bit about my culture in some ways.
Chao has always been dedicated to preserving the Chinese musical heritage, but performing to a culturally diverse audience in Montgomery County and elsewhere has made her want to create a more universal way to communicate her Chinese musical vocabulary.
I'm trying to reshape my dialect to help people better understand my music language. The main way that I do this reshaping process is through improvising music.
Being around people of different backgrounds, our world is getting increasingly diverse. You need to understand how to operate with people from different backgrounds.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
If there's one thing that's been defined over the past year, it's the power of youth activism. And young people here in Montgomery County are raising their voices and proving there's no limit for social change.
Good to see everybody.
Avery Smedley is a senior at Albert Einstein High School. She started Students Towards Equitable Public Schools, or STEPS, the mission of this student-led group to bring equity to Montgomery County Public Schools.
I feel like there's a lot of impetus for curriculum changes right now, and really just have to seize this moment, because there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things around racial equity. We have such a culture of student advocacy, but the only thing is we're not really seeing so many stakeholders in that advocacy. So we were thinking with STEPS, we really wanted to, get more students from the Down County Consortium, where I'm from. I go to Einstein, and then students from NEC to really show them your voice matters and give them a space in advocacy.
The group started a year ago and coalesced around the recent MCPS boundary study, where there were strong opinions on how to redraw school boundaries. The members of STEPS met with school officials and lawmakers to advocate for change they wanted to be considered during the decision-making process.
Well, definitely looking at policy. I mean, the fact of the matter is our schools are segregated.
Really discouraging to go to another school for an athletic event or something and just see how much nicer that they have it.
It just doesn't make any sense. We are in the same county. Funding is the same, but looking at PTAs, who has more monetary power, more political clout, we're seeing very different experiences for students just depending on their zip code and the color of their skin.
Hi, my name is Avery Smedley.
Avery grew up in Montgomery County and first attended an all-white elementary school where she realized pretty quickly she didn't look like the other kids.
It was really isolating for me being an elementary schooler in an all-white elementary school. You realize pretty quickly, hey, you do not look like the other kids, you are a person of color. We talked about when I was in first grade, this girl said to me, Avery, if you get any darker, I can't play with you. And I was horrified to go outside. One day my mom, we lived right up the street, she was like, Avery, it's a really nice day, let's stay out on the playground. And I just burst into tears, because I was horrified to get darker.
There's a different energy this time. This is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end. But we've got to educate ourselves. We've got to educate our children.
Just beyond that, segregation hurts white students as well. It hurts everybody. I mean, being around people of different backgrounds, we've seen that it helps with your cognitive abilities, your leadership skills, and our world is getting increasingly diverse, especially Montgomery County, but the United States, you can't be in a segregated place. You need to understand how to operate with people from different backgrounds.
When we think of Indian music, we often expect to hear the contemporary Bollywood sounds. Nishtha Raj, however, offers a different flavor to Indian music with an instrument she met when she was only 9 years old.
I started playing violin in the after-school program when I was in the 5th grade, and it was just sort of something my best friend at the time wanted to do, and she thought it'd be fun for us to do it together. When I started playing the violin, I just instantly connected with it. The idea of having a vehicle to express my feelings and also a place to retreat when the world got too crazy and just enjoy that. It was something that really gave me a lot of solace and a space for me to feel safe.
To immerse herself in Indian music and culture, following her college graduation, Nishtha traveled to India to study the oldest form of Indian classical music, Drupad.
It was also a really beautiful experience for me. It really taught me a lot about myself, life, and just being able to be absorbed in that music that I was so desperate to absorb myself. Just being in the root of it all and the culture and connecting with my own heritage was a very special point in my life.
So art was my outlet where I went to get the comfort, to feel happy.
Her passion for painting certainly helped her overcome the most difficult time of her life, but the agonizing memory still lingers to this day.
Sometimes I cry because of the difficulties I went through in my childhood when I was in Vietnam. It was always running away from the bullets. Many times I nearly got killed because bullets was flying all over. Looking back, sometimes I wish it didn't happen. But then if it didn't happen, my art would be different now. I would be a different person.
You don't need to go through the dumpster. We have plenty of food in here and we'll take care of you. And for us, it's about giving them hope.
It's become a familiar sight over the past year. Cars lining the streets waiting for hours to receive food from one of the many distribution sites in Montgomery County. The COVID-19 pandemic has intensified food insecurity here.
And help us to just be a blessing. And we just thank you for it, Father.
Something Reverend Pat Drumming knows all too well.
We just thank you and give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you, thank you. Ooh.
Before COVID-19, the Rainbow Community Food Pantry was serving 60 families per week. Today, they are providing 125 pounds of groceries to more than 500 families each week.
We were getting the calls continuously. Even before COVID, we knew that there was a great need because, this is the most ethnically diverse zip code in the entire state of Maryland. We have a lot of immigrants here, and not just immigrants who are coming to go to school. They're coming to go to school, but they have children and families. So they're working a lot of low-end jobs, to make ends meet. But I got calls last night from my scheduler saying there's so many people that are begging, saying, please, please, can you fit me in tomorrow? And there's no way we're going to say no.
We're often asked to approve committee membership through consent agenda, and I think that the people who were advanced today are great, and they do a great service to our community. But I do want to highlight, of the 4 committees that are not geographically bound, only 2 of those committees have up-county representation. The other 2 have 0 up-county representation in the whole committees. Of the 44 people who are members of these 4 committees, only 1 of 44 is in District 2. Only 5 are in the whole up-county. So I just want to highlight that, and we need to do a better job of geographic representation.
And Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter are at the forefront of social action, conducting Get Out the Vote activities, hosting candidate forums, and participating in Board of Education budget hearings are just a few of the ways that your impact is felt in our community. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is an anchor of hope in Montgomery County, and we look forward to your continued service for years to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Council hereby celebrates the Montgomery County Alumni Chapter and the Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated on your first annual Delta Day at the County Council. And be it further resolved that you have our commitment as partners in your ongoing efforts to improve the quality of life for residents all across Montgomery County. Presented on this 24th day of January in the year 2023 by Councilmember Laurie-Anne Sayles and Council President Evan Glass. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Miller-Rowe, and I serve as president of the Montgomery County, Maryland chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm here this morning with my vice president, Barbara Boney. She's over here somewhere. My social action chair, Pamela Luckett, and many of our chapter members from Montgomery County.
So tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started in the media industry.
There are a few ways I tell this story, but I think in light of why we're gathered here today, I'll tell this version of the story. I grew up in Detroit, but my journalism career I can really attach to the decisions two specific women in my life, well, three specific women in my life made. The first was my grandmother, Joanna White. When my dad was a child, he had polio. He was hospitalized for a long time. When he finally came home, he had a disability that prevented him from going to school, a physical disability. And my grandmother made the decision to move the family to Detroit so that he could attend a school that was accessible for him. And that decision put my family's trajectory in a completely different direction because he was educated, he was able to be trained as a drafter, and when General Motors finally opened up its drafting department to Black workers, he was able to work as a drafter and change the trajectory of my family. My mom, second woman, she had a very negative experience growing up in Mississippi as a child, was physically abused by a teacher. Her mother pulled her out of school. And when she finally went back to school, by this time they'd moved to Detroit, my mother had lost much of her ability to read and had to relearn to read. And she remembered the humiliation she felt at not being able to put words together, something she used to know how to do. And she promised herself that her children would know how to read. So growing up, that was impressed upon us, the power of curiosity, the importance of language. And then the third woman is my sister Dana, who introduced me to public radio when I was 16 years old, driving in a car. She said, "You've got to hear this show on public radio." And that was the first public radio show I listened to. It was Car Talk. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with that, but that was my public radio gateway show. And that's when I started listening. And those three women made these three important decisions that led me to my career in journalism many, many years later.
Thank you. It's so important to have those inspirations, Andrea. Thank you.
Can you hear? Good? Okay.
All right.
So I'm from Colombia, South America, no, Columbia, Maryland. I am Latina, proud to be a mom, proud to be Latina, proud to be a woman, but most importantly, proud to be a reporter in Montgomery County and have the opportunity to tell the stories of everyone here. As a council member said at the beginning, everybody has a story to tell. So I'm very, very, very honored to have that opportunity to tell the stories of people here, of my community. I feel so related with the documentary that we just watched because being an immigrant, being a Latina and a woman, it's hard. It's been quite a journey. I came into this country in 2001, right before the 9/11. And I decided to stay because my country had a lot of violence as well. And I experienced what happened here in 9/11. And I said, well, it's not that different. So wherever you are, you can make a difference. And that's what I was trying to do since the beginning. And I said it was quite a journey because I have to prove myself. Starting with my dad, when I said I want to be a communications a journalist, I was like, that's for beauty people with no brain. That was the concept back then in our countries. So I have to prove myself that I can do it. And when I was wanted to pursue my experience here in this country, I was knocking doors, Spanish media, because I didn't speak any English at all. So it was even harder to trying to find a job in my career. So someone said, probably she has no experience. So she probably can be in the marketing department and she can wear tight clothes and sell the product and be in the events of the media. And I was like, no, hold on. I reject that. I don't want that. I want to be a journalist. And I'm here today telling the stories of the people. So that's a little bit of my story.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan Lindsay. I'm originally from Plainfield, New Jersey. I'm a public information officer for Montgomery County Council. I hope y'all can hear me very well. Okay. I got involved in this work when I was a little girl. I remember getting ready in the mornings and seeing the news while my mom was watching the news. I'd be like, I want to be on TV. That looks really fun, and that's something I can see myself doing. So I did it. I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, where I majored in broadcast journalism. While I was there, I did several internships to try to see if this is something that I really wanted to do. And as I grew more and more, I'm like, hey, I can see myself interacting with the community and telling people stories. Interacting with people is something I really love. So being able to tell people stories was like, wow, everybody has a story. I did that for about 5 years, and I said, wow, this is really demanding. The deadlines are really tight, and I had to see what else I can do. So I was like, you know what? I need a healthier work-life balance, and here I am serving as the Public Information Officer for Montgomery County Council. Thank you, Councilmember Sayles, for this opportunity to serve on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. And last but not least, we have Suzanne.
Suzanne Pollak, and I always wanted to be a writer, be it with poetry, write all kinds of writing. And I fell in love with listening to how things got changed. I'm a little bit older, and I was into the Watergate experience, which really convinced me to try journalism. And I'm just I've been doing it for a very long time. And whether it's covering a really boring municipal sewer meeting or all the way to telling someone's really story that they have never told before, or covering something that's exciting. All of it makes me happy and enjoying it. And I'm telling their stories to make them happy as well.
Thank you for that. So we just saw the misrepresentation documentary. Can you tell me, oftentimes you're behind the scenes, you're behind the story. Did you relate to any of the struggles shared in the film? And we'll start at the second speaker. So we'll start with Andrea,
Sure.
and then we'll go around.
Absolutely. We in media, it's difficult. It's not, for women, it's not easy. I just share a situation that I had when I had an offer, instead of being a journalist, being the marketing. But also another thing that watching the movie that related so much to me is being a mom and have a balance. Because when I got pregnant and I told my boss back then, the reaction was like, what? We have a presidential election coming up. And I was like, I thought she was going to be happy, but the reaction was the opposite. Now you have to take care of a baby. Now you cannot work long hours. Now you cannot be a journalist. And of course, it's hard to have a balance, and more being an immigrant with no family, which means you have to pay for a babysitter to go to a movie. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. I think we have to be stronger as a woman, as a mom, and keep going, even though we have children. But that part of the movie really relates to me, because a woman have a work balance and pursue a career. It's not easy, but not impossible, because here I am, right?
Thank you, Andrea. And Jordan?
Yes, I'd like to piggyback off what Andrea just said in regards to a healthy work-life balance. I'm not a mother yet, but I know when it comes being a wife and a mother, it seems challenging while juggling a career. That seems that it's something that you just have to learn how to juggle it and do both at the same time simultaneously. So that was one of the things that stood out to me. Another thing was representation. Was another thing. And then one more thing that really stood out to me was Katie Couric mentioned her legs and not trying to be too prerogative at work. And I kind of feel the same because you don't want to wear something that's too low cut or that shows too much. And you have to really say, oh my goodness, if this is what I wear, would this person respect me and my brains? Or are they just looking at me because of what I look like? So that's one thing that stood out to me in this beautiful film.
Thank you.
Well, first I want to say with all those statistics, I'm proud to say that my MCM is run by a woman who our CEO replaced a woman before that. So that's great. I've often been told throughout my career is, why do you just want to work in the news side? Why don't you want to be on the screen? All good reporters want to be seen on TV. And that was never really my goal. But it was almost like looked down upon that I preferred to be not on camera. And the one story I will say is that several years ago when the Commanders were looking for a new name or were not supposed, the community was against calling them the Redskins, our sports writer where I previously worked decided he was never going to write the word Redskins in any of his stories. He decided he would change it. And my editor said, you can't do that. They're still technically the Redskins, and when you're covering this, and he said he refused. So they called me in and said, you're going to need to cover some football. Now, we know you don't know anything about this. And if they have known the older brother I grew up with, they'd be very surprised. But the truth is that it never dawned on them. They were just like, we're desperate. Somebody has to cover this football for a short time till we get someone else.
Thank you, Suzanne. Jenn?
Yeah, a couple of things occur to me. The first is I work in radio in part because I love the medium, but also because it's a non-visual medium. And so you would assume some of the tensions described in the documentary wouldn't show up, but it shows up in different ways. One of the things the film doesn't talk about is intersectionality and how being a woman and being a Black woman shapes your experience in your professional life. I wear my hair naturally. It's braided right now, but I had a boss and it was a day I just happened to blow my hair out and flat iron it rather than having it natural and curly. And when I came into the office that day, he looked at me and he said, oh, wow, Jenn, you look so professional.
Wow.
And I didn't even know how to respond because number one, nobody sees what I look like because I'm on the radio. Yeah. So why does it matter how I look? But those are the types of issues we run into as Black women, and that I resonated with the sexualization part of it. But when you add in that intersectionality, the story takes on another shape. But the other thing I wanted to note was, when we talk about women's experiences in the workplace, this one this documentary was really based on how her experience as a mother shaped the way she thought about media. But I also think about the stories women don't get to tell, the stories they don't get to talk about and how that affects our experience at work. Statistically speaking, probably half of the women in this audience have experienced a miscarriage. And yet we experience the miscarriage and we continue to work. And we don't talk about it. And we don't heal. Because there isn't space for that experience in our workplace. You're just being emotional, just get over it. It was in the second month. Why is it such a big deal? And so it's not just about the sexualization. It's the way we are required to shrink or disappear our experiences because it makes other people uncomfortable.
The county council and the types of questions. Something that resonated with me was just thinking about, as a mother, who is going to take care of the children and why we're asked those questions and why our appearance was, taken apart instead of what substance do you bring, what policies do you want to shape. And so I'm glad that a piece resonated with each of you that we saw. What do you believe is the importance of narrative and how women get perceived in the news and media? And we'll start with Jordan.
That's a really good question. One thing, like I'll say again, is representation matters. And when you see a lot of women being represented sexually and showing this and that and as objects, that takes a toll, not only women our age, but the younger generation. So one thing in the documentary that I noticed was the fact that representation does matter. When you have women in power and show that you can do it too. And if you see a woman that's doing it that you might not have seen done it when you were growing up, but you get to see it then, it's like, wow, that's something I can really do. I know young ladies are probably looking at Councilmember Sayles and saying, wow, this representation matters, and her serving on the council. You look at people like Oprah, just across the board, representation matters. So that was one thing out of the film that I think matters a lot and can change the way we see the world and can ultimately change the world. And we work towards a better place. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have two different things. One is I've been aware of this issue. Maybe this was a lot stronger in the movie, but I've been aware of it. And my goals, I've always tried to make sure that when I write about a person, male or female, I only write what's pertinent to that story. So if it doesn't matter what they're wearing or how many children they have, that kind of thing, I won't mention it. But if it does help tell what that kind of person is, then I will include it. To an extent, I just feel that the important thing to do, and I pride myself for this, is trying to get another side of a story. Like a lot of times, if you read some of the local or a lot of the papers, almost the first paragraph of a story is virtually the same in many newspapers. And I'm always looking for a little bit of a different angle, maybe the second day angle, and just something that other people don't think about, and that, could be the issue of how did this woman feel about this, or why does this happen to them, as opposed to just exactly what happened, the straight news.
All right.
Yeah, one of the things I'm really proud of on 1A is the way a central tenet of the show is nothing about us without us. So when we're talking about a community, that community has to be part of the conversation. Sometimes, you're doing an accountability interview with a politician, and that's one thing, but I also feel that my role as host is about facilitating the process of someone else telling their own story. And we get the chance to do that a lot on the show. I think because we create that space and I'm not telling someone about their own experience, people trust us with their stories. Anytime we do a story about women's health, for instance, the fact that people trust us with some of the most intimate details of their life because they know we're going to honor that story, it means the world to me. We did a show about stealthing, which is a form of sexual assault where the partner removes the condom during sex without consent. The number of women and men who came forward and said, during that show, this happened to me, and until I heard your guest, someone who had that experience, share her story, I didn't know that I could call it assault, even though that was what it felt like. So I think when we have the ability to create a space for people, not for us to tell their stories, but for them to tell their own stories, it gives other people permission to do it as well. And I think it's a huge responsibility for us, but I think it's an important one.
To add to what Jane said is telling those stories could be our own story of we need to speak out. If we don't feel right, we have to say it. Why I have to dye my hair to be on TV? Why, when I wanted to be a TV producer in the newscast, I asked the camera person why this shot is so wide. Oh, because she's the weather person and we have to show her body. So we have to speak up. I mean, we have to say no. And I say, why you didn't say something? I don't want to lose my job. Of course, we are. Being on TV or radio is not easy. Everybody, a lot of people want the chance to be on TV and tell stories and all that. And we want to have the opportunity and the chance. But at what cost? We have to speak up. And I'm sure there's going to be another opportunity. But that's my point. And that's what I have learned during these years, seeing my colleagues and what is happening in media with women, and we have to say stop as well.
Media is such a trusted space, and so I'm glad each of you all mentioned the trust and the responsibility that comes with telling stories and sharing your own stories, and the space that you provide for people to tell their stories. The narrative is so important in the news and media when so many people are saying to distrust the news and media. And so to tell some of these really controversial and scary stories, I'm really glad that we have some women who are compassionate and provide that safe space for these difficult conversations to be had. And so as a storyteller in your job, what has been the most fulfilling aspect in all of your experience? And we will start with Suzanne.
Well, watching that movie, one story that I did quite a while ago really hit home. I was covering a trial of a young guy who was high on drugs and killed someone. And the jury found him guilty. And while I was just strictly there to cover the trial, I saw his mother there, and I walked up to her, mostly because I wanted to ask if we could have a photograph of her son, but also I just wanted to see if she would talk. And I ended up going back to her house, spending an afternoon with her, and her telling me things that I never would have thought of, her saying how she doesn't shop locally anymore because her name is on her check and her credit card, and everybody looks at her as the mother of a murderer, and how she really is almost relieved that he was found guilty because she'll sleep at night not being scared that he'll overdose and die or he'll do something bad again. And it was just things I had never really thought of. And that's it's important to do, to get not the other side of the story, but the full story on how it affects a lot of things we write. It's obvious who it affects, but there's a whole big chain of more people who are affected. I covered one time a school board president, this was New Jersey, not here, who was living rent-free in a city-owned house, although she wasn't supposed to be and it was never declared. And when I found out, and I talked to her about it, her immediate reaction is, oh, no, you understand. You're not going to write about this. I mean, that would embarrass my children. You're not going to cover this, right? Absolutely no feeling that she was doing anything wrong. And I got a lot of grief on that story, but I also got a lot of positives from people who pay taxes in Camden, New Jersey. So I just try and make sure that there's more to a story than just the actual headline.
Thank you. Jenn?
For me, it's that we've created this show where we can have a national conversation. We hear from people across the country, in different parts of the world even. And I feel like it's a space that doesn't exist in many other places in media right now, where people are actually talking to one another. Now, don't get me wrong, things break down in the Twitter section sometimes, they do. But in the show itself, we can add listeners' voices, their questions, put them directly to our guests, whoever that guest is, and really get a gauge for how people are feeling about a given subject, and not just through the lens of what's happening on the East or the West Coast, but also through the lens of the experiences of people in that huge swath of America that's in between. That's one thing. The other thing is that I have the chance to mentor young producers when they come on the show. And we just hired a couple of young women to the team just in the last several months. And they're dynamos, so smart, so eager to learn. They're just sponges, and having the opportunity to pour into them the way women in my career poured into me, I love it. I love it. They make coming into work worth it on those days I really am struggling, because we all have those days, but knowing their little bright faces are going to be on the Zoom or in the meeting, or they are line producing a show and they're so excited about what they're doing, that gives me that boost I need to get through my day.
Thank you, Jenn.
For me, one of the most controversial stories recently that impact me a lot is the fentanyl crisis that we are facing. And I'd say it's controversial because people want to blame everybody. It's the fault of schools, it's the fault where are the parents, where are this and that. But we never know what the families are really facing inside. I had the opportunity to talk to one of the moms who recently lost her daughter, and she found her laying down dead for overdose on fentanyl in her room. And we went and visited her, and we went into the room, and there were signs of help everywhere in that room. So this is a serious issue that we are facing. And my responsibility is to tell those stories so other families and other people can learn from those stories, and we can take action and we can do something about it, because our young people are dying of fentanyl. And this is a serious issue. So our power in media is to talk about it, tell those stories, and get a call to action pretty much.
Thank you for that. That's so important.
Yeah, I would say the most fulfilling part of being a storyteller is actually getting to interact with people in the local community, especially a place like Montgomery County where it's extremely diverse. A lot of people here, I'm from New Jersey. It's very segregated there. We come here, it's super diverse. Everybody's, cohesively meshing with each other. Over 200 languages are spoken. So that's the good part. And you know what? Every person has a story. And these are real lives. Some stories are really good, but when I used to be a news reporter, there were also stories that were really depressing. And you have to remember these are people's real lives, and you have to be respectful. And that's something that I stood on as a reporter. But overall, interacting with the community is something I truly, truly enjoy.
Well, thank you all for your responses and for your passion, for being a role model, for telling the difficult stories, providing a safe space. I just want to share that my daughter recently graduated from the University of Maryland School of Communications. Yay! So she is very fortunate to have some incredibly powerful woman to look up to learn from, to glean from, and to inspire the next generation of responsible journalists and women in communications. And so I want to give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all for telling your stories, a bit about your stories, and thank you so much for telling our stories. And I know we have a few more minutes before our reception, and so I want to give our audience an opportunity to participate in the conversation. We have some microphones set up in the aisles. If you can yes, thank you so much. We have our President Sylvia from Montgomery Woman. And right before you go, Sylvia, I just wanted to acknowledge Councilmember Cindy DeBala from the city of Tacoma Park. Thank you so much.
Sylvia Henderson, I'm president of Montgomery Women. And I so identified with your story about the hair professionally being at IBM in the 80s. I got asked why my hair's been this way forever. I got asked why, you need to look a little more professional. And he never could be told exactly what that meant because, anyway, there's a longer story. For all five of you, so for you too, Laurie-Anne, what's one thing you would tell a younger woman today And when you're collecting Medicare, younger is anything under 50. So I'll just let you know that. That you can tell a younger woman today that you do to be yourself and still represent your own power and be in your own power so that they don't have to be anything else or be like anybody else. One little tip.
I think I would tell them that it gets better. This documentary was made in 2011. And as we were watching it, I am looking at the panel here. I'm thinking about the woman I serve with on the county council and the Me Too movement. We've made a lot of progress, and it happens when we show up. And so it gets better. And because we are present and we're vigilant, it's going to get better.
There's so many ways to answer this question. I'm trying to think about the best way to answer it. The world can't love who they don't know. And you can't love who you don't know. So if you want to give to the world from the best of you, first know who you are. And that means knowing the stories that have built who you are. Knowing your mother's story, your father's story, your grandmother's story, your grandfather's story, on down the line. Knowing the stories of the aunties and the mothers in your community who don't have that blood relation, but they're auntie nonetheless. And then knowing that your story has value and bringing your full self to everything you do. You don't have to be less. You don't have to be smaller. You don't have to be less bright. Your light will only allow other people's lights to shine more brightly. There's nothing reductive about your light. And you repeat that to yourself as many times as you have to on those hard days until you believe it. And surround yourself with people who understand that concept as well. Because on those days when you're feeling dim, they'll light up a little bit more, help you light up a little bit more, and you keep it moving. But that's what I would say. And I wish someone had told me that when I was 10 or 12.
I will say that we cannot forget our mission, and we are a bridge to connect hearts. That's, I think, what we're here sitting, and this is our profession. And we do it with such a passion, and we put our heart out there all the time in every single story, all the time, because we want another person to learn and listen to this story and do something with this story. Our work, we don't want to just be there. We want to connect hearts. So that's my little tip. Never forget that we are the bridge and we can make a difference with those stories.
I will say confidence. Loving yourself, and not really seeking too much to be validated by everybody. I know when I was a reporter, I had went and got braids, and all the Black reporters were like, "Oh my gosh, you're so brave!" And I'm like, first of all, it's a protective style, and it looks nice, and it's okay. This is not going to change my storytelling skills. And actually, my news director complimented me on it, all because I had confidence enough to do it and not seek validation. So that's my little key there.
And I would tell somebody new into the profession is don't get caught up in having to get the story out there before anybody else does. Well, that's important, but you've got to have it first. Don't be, if you see some fact in like 5 other papers, that doesn't mean it's true. And just make sure, as long as you know in your heart you're doing a good job, then I'm sure you are.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, we have time for 2 more questions. Oh, we'll take one over here and one more over here. And our panelists will be available afterwards during the reception. So please find time to ask them.
I just want to thank you all for this afternoon. It's been a pleasure watching the documentary and hearing from all of you. My name is Habiba Jackson. I am a long-term resident of Montgomery County. I understand and relate to moving to Montgomery County from New Jersey. It was a total culture shock in 1985, but I'm glad my mom made that decision. I want to tell you guys, I am a manager supervisor in the federal government in project management and science. And in my division, the 7 senior leadership team consists of 7 women, the whole entire senior leadership team. Mm-hmm. 4 of us are African American and 1 is Dominican. So representation matters. We recently interviewed someone who lives in Texas. And at the end of the interview, she said, it has been an absolute pleasure interviewing with this panel. Regardless of what happens, this has been a wonderful experience. She said to us, I have never experienced an interview like this before, or an interview with a panel that looked like this. Mm-hmm. And we all smiled. We understood what she said without her not saying what she was saying. Mm-hmm. But what I've learned as a supervisor is that it takes more than just representation, right? I've had to sponsor women, people of color, in order to get jobs with us. So I wanted to know, what are you all doing in your position, or what do you think we can do to not only have that representation, but really to sponsor and to bring in more women, more people of color into fields that are male-dominated?
I think some of it is just the hands-on work of mentorship and helping to create policies in your workplace that diversify how recruitment happens and retention, because it's also not just about recruitment, it's about retention. Because you can get people in the door, but if the culture is toxic or not supportive, they're not going to stay. And then you just have this revolving door of women and people of color coming in, then going right back out because they're like, oh, this is clearly not for me. So one of the things we do at my station, and we unionized recently, just in the last year or so, is really push management on that recruitment piece, but also how do we create a culture here that is supportive of everyone? It's not enough for us to be in the room if you're not listening. It's not enough for us to talk to you and give you suggestions if those suggestions are never acted upon. And so for us, it required organizing, right? I think sometimes in companies, we forget how much power staff actually has, but you have to organize and come together around those core ideals that you share, and then say, hey, this is what we want. And this is how we expect you to achieve those goals. Here's how it can happen. So that you can do that collective work, but also individually. So for me, like, I never say no. If a high school or a college wants me to come speak, I never say no. Doesn't matter if I really have the time or not. I always say yes. And when I see young people coming in the door, I don't wait for them to come to me. I go to them and say, hey, I'm Jenn. My office is right down the hall. Anytime you want to have coffee or lunch, let's set it up, make that connection, and then I keep up with them. And that's just part of how my day is structured. Who do I need to check in with to see how they're doing today? And sometimes it's about work, sometimes it's about other stuff that they just need to talk. And so it's maintaining those relationships so they know there's somebody in the building who has their back. That's what I do.
I have to say at Montgomery Community Media, we're very lucky. We're very diverse, a lot of women. That's why it works everything well. We're organized. So yeah, we've been very lucky. But I would say, if you feel that something is not right, you have to have the right to say it to someone. Like, why don't have so many women? Why don't we, things like that. I'm talking about diverse and people in color. I agree. It is at Montgomery Community Media, they realize that it is important to communicate to the Latino community in Montgomery County. So that's why they hired me 3 years ago. And I'm so happy about it, because it is important to communicate in their own language, because we have our own struggles. So as I said, we are lucky. I know many organizations are not. In my past, I experienced that situation. And I was scared. I was afraid. I'm going to lose my job if I say something. But now I'm so confident. What Jordan said, I feel so powerful, honestly, that I don't mind. I'm going to say it. You know, what I'm going to lose, at least I say it. And I know another door is going to open for me.
All right. In 30 seconds or less, we are being asked to exit the theater so they can set up for the next event. And so Jordan and Suzanne, in 30 seconds or less.
Yes, I would say mentorship, and I agree representation is not enough. You need policy changes with that representation to make actual changes. So I would say overall, those two things go hand in hand.
And I just want to say it's important to realize that just because someone is a woman or is a person of color, that doesn't mean that they are, good in that area or they represent that what you want to do is find a person who's open and willing to listen to all sides and be more aware of what's going on, regardless of their background. They can learn all the time.
Thank you again to our panelists. And I'll just close quickly with Representation Matters. And I'm really proud that just last week we launched our Youth Advisory Council. And we have 16 participants from every legislative district in the county. And out of the 16 participants, 14 are young women. So I'm really excited about the next generation of women. And I can't wait to see when this documentary is updated. Thank you.